U.S. History Summer School. Okay, we're done with Jackson. Woo! And now I really just want to skip to Polk and the Mexican-American War. If there's anyone out there who is really passionate about Van Buren or William Henry Harrison or John Tyler, then please make a TikTok about them and tag me in it and I'll duet it on here. But I just want to skip them. Okay. So we're skipping to talking about James K. Polk because he is the epitome of the Manifest Destiny president. And Manifest Destiny, of course, is that euphemism of all euphemisms that says that white US Americans are just destined to expand from sea to shining sea and make their way all across the continent. You've all seen this painting, right? I'm legally obligated as a US history teacher to show you this painting, basically. So a lot of things were happening in the 1840s a la Manifest Destiny. For one, James K. Polk really campaigned on getting all of the Oregon Territory, which we currently kind of shared with England. I honestly don't completely understand that, but Polk basically wanted to take control of the Oregon Territory all the way up to the southern boundary with Russian Alaska. His campaign slogan was 54-40 or bust, referencing the line of longitude. I don't teach geography. Obviously, we end up during Polk's presidency negotiating with England and we kind of split the Oregon Territory. You're welcome, Canada. I'm just kidding. I love you, Canadians. I have a lot of Canadian followers and I really don't want them to leave me. In 1845, the U.S. annexed Texas. Hey, I'm from Texas, born and raised. Oh no. Now I'm going to make some Texans really mad. It's time for your annual reminder that the Texas Revolution, which is the reason why we can fly our flag at the same height, we were once our own country, and yada yada, remember the Alamo, that was fought over slavery. The Mexican government was abolishing slavery, and the white Texans wanted to keep their enslaved people, so they rebelled. Texas! So by 1846, 1 year into Polk's presidency, the U.S. does control most of the continent except for what's today the modern Southwest. That's still part of Mexico. And Polk is yeah, we're just going to round up. I'm going to need that. I'm going to need that little chunk. Can we start a war? Anyone want to start a war? Follow for more summer school. U.S. History Summer School. Why did the U.S. enter the Mexican-American War? Well, it's really complicated. It's very nuanced. And I don't know, there's a lot of considerations the philosophical. I'm just kidding. It is land. The U.S. just wanted more land. So as I mentioned in my last summer school video, Polk was the Manifest Destiny president. He wanted to control the entire kind of continent from sea to shining sea. And really the only thing left in his way was Mexico. He'd had his eye on the so-called California territory. You can see the map up here. And he'd offered to buy that territory from the Mexican president for $20 million. He was like, hey, Jefferson did it with the Louisiana Purchase. Why not do it again? The problem was, when Napoleon sold us the Louisiana Purchase, France had just gotten that land. There weren't a bunch of French people living there. But basically what Polk is proposing to the Mexican president is why don't you just give me half your country? Just sell it away. Yeah, no, that wasn't going to happen. So the war starts over a border dispute. Basically, Mexico believed that the southern border of the United States was the Nueces River, which would give Mexico more territory. But the United States said, no, it's the Rio Grande. By the way, I'm a Texan and I know we mispronounce everything. It's Rio Grande. I know that, but I just cannot unsay Rio Grande. I'm sorry. So most historians understand that Polk was basically just looking for a reason to go to war. He'd already drafted his speech requesting Congress to declare war on Mexico before any of this stuff happened that I'm about to tell you about, by the way. So General Zachary Taylor, future President Zach, is just hanging out down on the northern side of the Nueces River with his soldiers, and then he just casually wanders across the river into this disputed territory. While he's there, they encounter Mexican troops, shots are fired, and American soldiers are killed. Now, this is where it gets a little bit tricky. Back in Washington, D.C., President Polk is aha, a war is the foot. And, the Mexican soldiers have killed American soldiers on American territory. Remember, in the United States, they believed that that territory south of the Nueces River was technically the United States. But meanwhile, the Mexican government is no, you crossed this disputed border. You crossed into our territory, and, you were the ones who instigated this fight. Yada, yada, yada. Most people in Congress were looking for an excuse to go to war and take land from Mexico anyway, and so they approved Polk's resolution to go to war. One exception is going to be a young, loud, annoying representative from Illinois known as Abraham Lincoln. He very famously gives a speech demanding that President Polk identify the exact spot where American blood was shed, because he believes that it was actually shed on Mexican soil, in which case we were the instigators and we really shouldn't be going to war. He became known as Spotty Lincoln because he passes these spot resolutions. Tell me the spot where it happened. No one listens and we go to war. U.S. History Summer School, you all know how I feel about military history at this point, so let me just give you some of the highlights, the things I think are interesting about the Mexican-American War. After losing and then failing to win back Texas, and then becoming like a military dictator for a hot second, General Santa Anna had been exiled to Cuba. But he tricked Polk into helping him get back in command of the Mexican army, because he convinced Polk, like, don't worry, as soon as I'm in charge, I'll negotiate a truce and you'll get a lot of the land that you want. But aha, of course he didn't do that. He turned on Polk. He didn't really turn on him, right? I mean, he just outwitted the American president to get back to his own country and rule, and he became president. General Winfield Scott very famously lands his troops at the port of Veracruz and then begins marching his army towards Mexico City with absolutely zero chill and zero historical sensitivity. His troops follow the exact same route that Hernan Cortez followed when he was marching to conquer the Aztecs. By 1847, the U.S. troops had reached Mexico City fairly easily, and they were laying siege to Chapultepec Castle, which is one of the highest points in Mexico City. The castle was defended by a group of young military cadets. A lot of them were teenagers who were known as the Niños Héroes, and they defended the castle until they chose to jump and commit suicide instead of surrendering to the U.S. troops. Also, throughout the war, the Mexican government was actively recruiting a lot of different groups from the United States who were disenfranchised, like new immigrants, to come and fight for Mexico instead. And let me just say, like, they had a lot of groups to choose from. For example, escaped enslaved people from the southern United States were like, yeah, we're happy to join you. And a lot of different immigrant groups, most famously a group of Irish immigrants. They created their own battalion known as the St. Patrick's Battalion, or the San Patricios, and they manned the artillery and fought in a lot of the fiercest battles of the Mexican-American War. Today, they're still honored in both Ireland and Mexico. But the U.S. military does eventually win the war, and in 1848, we signed the Treaty of Guadalupe, Hidalgo, and it does a few very important things. One, it forces the Mexican government to officially recognize that Texas is now part of the United States and that the Rio Grande is the southern border. And Polk got exactly what he wanted. Mexico is forced to sell all of its territory north of the Rio Grande to the United States, and the U.S. pays them $15 million, but like, no, it's not worth it. And we're going to talk about this more in future videos, but keep in mind that basically overnight, because of this treaty, around 100,000 Mexican people and, another probably 100,000 indigenous people immediately became part of the United States. And so for a lot of people of Hispanic or indigenous descent in the modern day American West, they did not come to the United States. The United States came to them. And we're going to talk a lot about how they were treated or mistreated by the U.S. government. But in the Treaty of Guadalupe, Hidalgo, the U.S. government promised that they would recognize all of the previous land ownership and land rights of Mexican people and also indigenous groups. That's not going to happen.